Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's installment of the OpenText Webinar Live Series. With me are Jason Cassidy from Shinydocs and Janet DeGuzman from the OpenText Compliance Group, and they're here to talk to you today about leveraging OpenText Content Suite and Shinydocs Shinydrive for optimized ECM utilization. I'm going to hand things over to Janet, and we can get started.
Welcome, everyone, and we are delighted to be here. My name is Janet DeGuzman, and I am the Compliance Director within Product Marketing at OpenText. I've been in the information management space for about 15 years, most of it within professional services. And in my current role at OpenText, I'm responsible for the promotion of our compliance solution. That is how EIM, or Enterprise Information Management, helps our customers solve regulatory compliance challenges. And with me, I'm delighted to have Jason Cassidy. Jason is the CEO of Shinydocs Corporation, and he has over 20 years of experience within the EIM industry. Shinydocs Corporation is a very important partner for OpenText. They were nominated as a 2016 OpenText Technology Partner of the Year, and OpenText Shinydrive by Shinydocs, their product, is OpenText's best-selling third-party technology. So very excited to co-present with Jason and with Shinydocs. I'll talk a little bit about the regulatory compliance landscape out there, and then I'll follow it up to talk a little bit more about information governance specifically and how 5 particular requirements are important for regulatory compliance. I'll then hand things over to Jason, who will talk about why enterprise content management solutions are sometimes underutilized, what causes that trend, and a blueprint for success. So it's not only going to talk about why it may be an issue, but some suggestions on how to solve that and the benefits of that approach. The compliance arena has actually never been more in flux and more complex. It's estimated that for the over 100,000 regulations there are globally, an average of 155 regulatory alerts for new or changing regs are issued every day. To illustrate how the landscape has changed, for those of you in the U.S., the Code of Federal Regulations, those are the general rules and regulations published by the Federal Register, now stands at over 180,000 pages. Compare that to back in 1960 when it was about 23,000 pages. That's an increase of about 9 times. Couple that trend with the unprecedented volumes and variety of information that's generated and received within your organization. And it can make it very time and effort intensive to collect and analyze and present required data for compliance purposes, which makes it no surprise that in many surveys, such as the one on your screen here by PwC, regulatory risk and complexity tops the list often when it comes to areas of most concern within organizations. Note that in this Thomson Reuters survey, 75% of respondents stated that over the next year, they expect that the focus of managing regulatory risk will be either slightly or significantly more than today at 75% of organizations. Because of the increasing complexity within the landscape, as I mentioned, organizations are putting more and more attention to it. Our research has shown, for example, chief compliance officers are becoming more empowered within their organizations, now often reporting to the CEO directly or to the board. More budget is being allocated to compliance offices. You might be happy to hear, because I think organizations are recognizing that although compliance is sometimes deemed quote unquote expensive, non-compliance has more costly impacts potentially. And then finally, organizations are also investing in technology more and more to automate their compliance processes. All really positive trends within the compliance arena. All organizations, regardless of industry, size, or geography, have regulations and standards to which they must comply, right? So regardless of whether you're considered a highly regulated industry or not, whether you're in North America, Europe, Asia, small, medium, large, you have rules and regulations to which you must follow. And we at OpenText believe that good information governance is at the heart of any strong compliance program. all of your stakeholders, regulators, shareholders, the courts, your constituents, if you're a government, are increasingly concerned about your business practices and the records that support and document those practices. Information is one of the most vital strategic assets that any organization possesses, and well-governed information is central to the success of any organization. So let me talk a little bit about 5 information governance requirements that are core to regulatory compliance. And we'll start off with probably the hottest one, which is information security and privacy. Certainly, technology innovation and the growth of structured and unstructured information are pushing the limits of privacy. You may recall that 2014 was deemed the year of the breach. Why? Because so many high-profile data breaches were front-page news, including Target, which is being called the largest ever retail breach, with 70 million customers' personal information compromised. In 2015, interestingly, is being called the year of the breach 2.0. So I don't know about you, but I see a pattern here, and it's not a positive one. In 2015, Ashley Madison had 37 million customer records breached, and Anthem, another organization, had personal information from over 80 million people compromised. And that breach at Anthem went undetected for 9 months, which is what allowed, I think, the numbers to go up. There have also been some massive waves within the privacy law landscape. Regulators are really cracking down on companies, and customers are demanding more and more protection of their personal information. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the latest piece of news that have come out within the privacy landscape, Europe's GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulation. I mention it because it was just made effective on May 25th of this year, and countries and organizations have 2 years to bring it into law and to comply because it's pretty complex. And what the GDPR does is it affects any business that houses data about European citizens. So it's not just those within Europe. The big changes being that it is now one law for one continent, which means that it replaces all the other privacy laws that were implemented inconsistently across the 28 member states within the European Union. There have been many updates with the GDPR around privacy requirements, and they are much, much more stringent. This has tremendous impacts on the information governance world, including the need to ramp up records management programs and policies, and that organizations need to be really clear about where data is stored and what is being held, especially information about their customers. And then lastly, I really have to mention about the fines that the GDPR is now introducing. For noncompliance, it can reach up to 20 million euros or 4% of a company's annual global revenue. That's incredible and sends a clear message that the European Commission means business when it comes to noncompliance for privacy. And then finally, to wrap up this point here, I want to drive home that studies show that the number one cause of security incidents within your organizations are your own employees. Why is that? Well, lack of secure file and data transfer practices. Many employees are still using personal emails to send sensitive files. Employees are using perhaps unsanctioned public cloud-based services that are not secure, putting sensitive information on removable media like USB drives and having those go missing or get lost. And then finally, having inadequate access control and permissions models within their shared repositories. So for those reasons, whether it's malicious or unintended, employees are the number one cause of information breaches. Regulatory records retention. In the U.S. alone, there are over 14,000 regs that stipulate how long records should be kept. And in those new privacy laws that I mentioned on the previous slide, there are requirements for organizations to retain key records, such as customer consents and data breach records. So that makes records management programs even more important than ever. Many organizations actually don't realize that over-retention of information can be a serious liability, whether it increases risk for the cost of maintenance, noncompliance, or can even result in fines and sanctions. Further, the more information you keep, the harder it is to find the right content and drive smarter decisions. Information governance becomes much more manageable when you reduce data volumes. And in order to do that in a defensible way, you need to know what you've got, where it's stored, its value, and then you need to classify it as such. Talk a little bit about electronic discovery. There are currently over 90 countries that have freedom of information laws. And those laws give citizens the right to request and access information from and about their governments. And under those laws, government agencies must provide that requested information unless it's protected from public disclosure. But if it's not, it must be presented within a mandated period of time. And government agencies aren't the only organizations that need to efficiently and accurately respond to information requests. There's legislation like the Bank Secrecy Act, USA Patriot Act, and FDA Safety and Innovation Act, otherwise known as FDAsia, that have specific e-discovery requirements. Regulatory investigation is actually on the rise, so it can be very costly if they don't have their information governance house in order. So I asked the question, why do we keep records at all? We keep records as organizations because they're the evidence of what we do, right? Business records provide the evidence of what we do as an organization, our activities, our transactions, decisions, our commitments, the commitments we've made, policies, communications, all of it. It is how we prove we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And business records also demonstrate compliance with regulations and with standards. So in addition to protecting, retaining, and producing records for regulatory compliance, organizations must also be able to demonstrate that its records are trustworthy and reliable. So it's not just being able to present the information, but also prove that the systems in which they're housed and the records themselves have integrity and authenticity. And finally, regulatory reporting. A common requirement for most regulations and standards is that organizations provide an account of their compliant activities or their outcomes. These come in the form of reports, and they also need to be managed, right? Regulators ask us to show us what we've done and that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But as we have mentioned before, unprecedented volumes and variety of structured and unstructured information can make it very difficult and time-intensive to do that. And it's actually being made clear in many studies that regulatory reporting can take quite a toll on an organization and staff, especially with the current complex regulatory landscape, especially if they don't have their information governance structures in place. Compliance officers are experiencing what's being called regulatory fatigue, which is a very real concept and a notion. And some bodies, some partisan bodies, are actually attempting to measure what that toll is, and I've got a statistic there on the slide. The Dodd-Frank legislation in 2014 was estimated to add over 4 million hours of paperwork within the United States in that year. Those are 5 information governance requirements for regulatory compliance. And I want to add that we believe that the best way to ensure compliance is to make it easy for your employees. An involved information governance program works in the background, seamlessly and integrated with operational processes that enable employees to work where and how they want to without disruption. And that's really the key to success and the heart of what we want to talk about today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason, who will continue this topic.
Great. Thanks a lot, Janet. Well, one thing that Janet alluded to there, it's saying that employees are the #1 cause of security breaches. It's in some ways because they are the #1 cause of underutilization of the secure systems that are provided to them. The systems that OpenText provides and other ECM vendors, when utilized properly, will check a lot of those boxes. OpenText provides the most complete solution in the industry, and that's why Gartner gives them the leadership role. But quite frankly, these solutions are in competition with, and I'm not going to cite the cloud vendors because quite frankly there's not a lot of data in there. When you compare it to things like shared drives and local desktops, people use these shared drives and local desktops for really good reasons because they work with every application that the end users want. They've never had to be trained on it because the interface hasn't changed for over 20 years. When you bring in a new solution, it will certainly check all the boxes with respect to the information governance. However, the change sometimes creates a barrier to adoption, and that's where the relationship with our company, Shinydocs, with our Shinydrive product, has really helped out. So when you bring in your information governance solution, of course I recommend OpenText Content Suite, you are going to get the information security, regulatory records retention, information integrity, discovery, regulatory reporting when the data is going into the system. So you have tasks of migrating data, you have tasks of migrating users, and then you have tasks of training users. The good news about our partnership that we have is we eliminate the burden of all three of those tasks. We can provide you the same interface before and after migration. We can provide you a day-forward solution where you don't actually have to do the migration up front. Every document that a user starts touching will start going into the compliant system, Content Suite in this case, without you having to do an upfront migration. And I want you to have a quick look at this interface that we provide here. I hope it is the most boring interface that you can imagine because, quite frankly, it's the same one that you've been using for the last 20 years on your desktop. End users don't have to be trained on Content Suite anymore because it is just the same as what they've been doing with their local drives and shared drives. But what's really important is it is powered by the Enterprise Content Management System in the back end. It gives you your records retention, it gives you your search, it gives you your audit history, it gives you your version history, all the things that lead to that compliance. But from the end user's perspective, nothing has really changed. And I want to really highlight works with every application, from your AutoCAD and your MicroStation to the other engineering design stack to your marketing, such as Photoshop and InDesign. And I start with those ones because everybody can do Microsoft Office. But a lot of times it falls off when you start saying, hey, do you work with this other application that our organization uses? When you're creating drawings, for example, let's say your organization is building a bridge and that drawing has to be retained for the lifespan of the bridge, which is typically 100 years or more, plus 30 years, how can you demonstrate that if you're just putting it on a shared drive? How can you do records retention if you only support Microsoft Office? Working like a shared drive like we do, working like a local drive like we do, allows us to work with every desktop application. And it drives 100% adoption of the system through a couple of means. First of all, we're not leaving behind any of the end users. They're using the system regardless of their management approach. Also, once you have eliminated their shared drive seamlessly, there's really no other place to store the documents. We actually have customers that have, through group policies, have eliminated local drives altogether, where every save that they do is now managed in Content Suite. And that is every save that they do, no matter where it is, they would actually have to do extra work in order to keep the document out of compliance. And you can't do that unless you have a solution that just works seamlessly with the end users. Most importantly, if you take only one thing away from my perspective of this, I want you to think of this as not a massive project, not a massive undertaking like a lot of other migrations might be. When you deploy a OpenText Shinydrive solution, immediately you start benefiting by the documents are going into Content Server as people are using them. Immediately, within, and we say 48 hours to deploy, 7 days for all of the active content to be in Content Server, and 90 days to eliminate the shared drives. How do we do that? First of all, the solution gets deployed very quickly. From a server-side perspective, it is 1 hour of interaction with your staff. Then over the next 2 days, you get it rolled out, you tell people, or you don't tell them. The nice thing is drive letters don't change and the experience doesn't change for the users. It just gets rolled out and they start using the same documents in the same location as far as they're concerned. After 7 days, people have voted on their own as to what the active content is, just by utilization. All that active content is now in Content Server. You're getting all of the 5 information governance requirements checked within the first 7 days for all of your active content. And then, between the 70 and 90 days, we can do, through a number of different mechanisms, with the things that we call crawler-led migration, which moves all the rest of the data into Content Suite. And of course, I've said the 5 information governance requirements over and over again, so I'm not going to rattle them off again. But the most important thing is that you are now getting those immediately. And I want to draw attention to data fidelity, because that's a key component. A lot of times when you start putting your data into a new system, the system starts manipulating your data and forcing you to change the way you do business. Things like linked Excel spreadsheets or CAD drawings with Xrefs. In a lot of cases, it just breaks them under the guise of, well, don't worry, you have information governance now, you have to give up a little bit. We say no. You want to work in the native applications for the native document. Keep the document 100% fidelity. We don't want converted documents. We don't want PDF versions necessarily. You can work the way your end users want to work, yet get all of the IG requirements checked. And doing this reduces costs. And I want you to think about this for a second, because back in the 90s, when we first started rolling out these types of solutions, all of the organizations out there, they really wanted to customize like crazy. They felt we really need our process built into a website that does this. And OpenText, of course, had the first and the best solution at that time. And it allowed people to implement their end users' workflow exactly the way they wanted to. But over years, all of the organizations identified, you know what, as we keep up with the times, as OpenText keeps making their products better and as end users evolve, we got to keep redoing our customizations, and the interfaces that we have to train our users on are changing every few years, and we have to do training costs over and over again. So if you think about it, if we just give somebody a local drive interface that provides all the back-end power, that interface never has to change. As you do your upgrades, it's seamless for the end users, and it's seamless for you. Also, you don't have the redundancy of other systems that are out there. We have literally worked with OpenText, with our customers, to retire systems such as SharePoint, to retire other competing systems. 100% of the documents are now in Content Server, and the end users, some of them know and care, some of them don't know or care. But the most important thing is all the data is managed, and you've eliminated competing systems, and your end users haven't complained. Your end users just want to do their work every day. They're not in the business of necessarily being governed with respect to their information. They just want to do their job. We give you a tool that allows you to work with your entire data set, and that's a little bit of a poke actually at Enterprise Sync and Share tools, where it automatically creates data islands. We give you your entire enterprise data set at your fingertips in the native format, just like you might have had with your old shared drive, but powered by the Content Suite. So I'm going to touch on some customer success that we've had, and one thing I want to talk about is remote locations as well. So for remote locations, and this is something that we've done and we're quite proud of, we found that oil and gas companies, mining companies, a lot of multinational organizations, they have satellite offices out there that need access to their IG solution. It's their enterprise library of information, and they need access. Problem is, if it's centrally administered in one location around the world, then how does everybody get access? We have a solution that allows you to create enterprise libraries that are completely synchronized around the world, so everybody has up-to-date information. And the most important thing is you don't have to be connected to the mothership in order to use these. You get your enterprise search, you get all your documents in their native format, and you get 100% of the data that you need. And if you're on an oil rig and that oil rig has no connectivity, it still works. And that's something that's very unique to us in the industry. I want to talk specifically about a public sector customer that we've had great success with. This is one of our earliest adopters of Shinydocs and the Shinydrive. Back in January 2012, they rolled out OpenText Content Suite, and the adoption was fine. What does the 75,000 line there mean? That is document views per month. And it was rolling along, and they were trying to get it out to the end users, and it was working fine. The highest value documents they were putting in there because they had to be in there. But adoption was a little low for everything else. What happened in June of 2015? They purchased Shinydrive. They started working with Shinydocs Corporation. And what happened? Immediately, a dramatic increase in utilization of the system. And why did that happen? It's not because people like our interface better than they like the interface that they had the day before. They just were familiar with this interface. And it opened the door for them now to get more data into the system. There is well over 2 million more records in their system right now than there was back in June of 2015. And these are high-value assets. When we met Janet back at the AIM meeting there, it was great. We decided to co-author with Janet's expertise a document which is the blueprint for success. So I'd like to give everybody a little bit of homework here. If you can read that URL, it's bit.ly/compliance-blueprint. It has some very good information that touches on what we've talked about here today. And you can see our contact information there. It's jcassidy@shinydocs.com. That's me. And DeGuzman at opentext.com as well, and you can get in touch with Janet. And I'd really like you to do that because what we'd like you to take away from this is being more knowledgeable about how you can drive utilization to drive your compliance within your organization. I want you to not be intimidated by what it's going to take to roll this out. As I described before, it is not a very painful process because we don't have to change a lot of what the end users are doing, and that's a critical piece. So getting in touch with us is the first step in what we'd like to do is find out more about what your organization is trying to achieve. We would like to perhaps give you a demonstration or let you do a proof of concept of the software and understand how it's going to meet those 5 information governance requirements, and it's going to do it really easily. So please get in touch with myself or with Janet, and we will get you connected to the right people to get this right information so that your organization can check off the governance requirements for regulatory compliance.